That way he can drop it into the podcast feed easily.
I was talking about his interior logic. And
We're gonna have to.
I should have seen that coming.
We're gonna have to go with the regular strip on this one. I can set it up as we talk here, but we're going. So let's see what happens.
Hi, friends.
Chad is waiting for new messages.
Looks like there's somebody on Periscope. That's nice. Hello, friends.
All right, Rob, pretend like we don't have you on yet.
You don't have me on yet.
A just made me a hot toddy. It's damn good, son. Damn good. Hello, everyone. Hello, friends. Hello, pals.
Hello.
We are a little bit behind on getting started here because the Future Dark Overlord is Future Dark ill, and I took a nap.
Oh, sorry.
And I shouldn't have taken a nap. And even though,
I'm very sweaty or hot or something.
Yeah,
hey, Dawn
you
Lashinsky,
are.
Nice to see you.
All right, now we're starting to cook.
Woo.
Now we're starting to cook with spam. How many? We got some people showing up.
Yeah, we
got some people. People who like the caddy shacks, the shacks with the caddies in it. You know how it goes. All right. AK, are you ready?
No.
No, we're not.
Zoom in. Zoom in.
Jason, Dawn, Nelson. Hello, everyone. Hello. How are you all? We got a bunch of people coming in. Just enjoy the graphics I set up for you. It's very lovely. Lovely graphics. He's getting set up.
I'm ready to go.
Okay, and here we go, and we'll go back to Maine. Everybody, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys.
Welcome. You know, I think we do have to close those blinds a little bit. So you pop up and do that. While you do that, I'm just going to cut to the chase. Ladies and gentlemen, we're already off script. It's already out of control. Our guest today is none other than Empty Set Movie Maven, Mr. Robert Otto. Hello, Robert. How are you?
I'm well. I'm feeling quite maven-y today. How about a Fresca?
What, Rob, real quick, while A's getting set up here, what is the connection with The Boys and Caddyshack and Fresca? What's going on with that?
And Fresco, Lord.
I believe there's just a separate connection from two different sides of The Boys doing something with Fresca, and of course, Judge Smales offering a Fresca to Danny Noonan after their meeting in his office. So I don't know that connects the two. I believe they just both have separate, equally awesome connections to the Fresca.
Is Homelander the child of Danny Noonan and Maggie? Is that a fact, Rob?
Right.
You know, remember when we get introduced in the first scene to the unknown cousin of the Noonan clan? Yeah. Maybe that's Homelander,
that could
right?
Be Homelander's dad. It could be home. Hello, Mike. Hello, Stephanie. All right, guys.
Hi, guys. Hi, Jason. Hi, Allison.
We are going to finish
part of the script.
We are going to finish up our chit chat, and then we're going to dive into the script because, as you may know, we stripped the audio from this, and we put that in the podcast feed. So in a moment, we'll pretend you didn't get a script because I hate you.
So in a moment, we're going to pretend to start over, is what you're going to say, so that I can do the reading. Should I go ahead and do that now?
No. You gotta wait till you start.
Okie doke. So this is an interesting thing because we are actually going to talk about it on the live cast part where this, I understand from Scott, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, this was oh, Lord, I'm going to say it out loud and it's going to be trouble. This was a seminal movie for you guys.
Well, I'm not going to say anything.
I knew it.
The word seminal. Can you, turn those in. All right. Printing out a script for myself. Got a script printed for the wife. Let's go back to the beginning. All right, Rob, pretend like you're not here. Here we go. This is the smooth operation. The smooth operation that we have. Hello, Tracy says, hello, smackers.
I like Steven, it, Tracy. I do.
Fresca. Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And hello, everyone.
Hello,
welcome
everybody.
To episode number 59 of StorySmack. I have with me the lovely AKB BK Sigler. I'm still getting used to it. So I've only been married since March, you guys. It's very
Actually, since June. But
since June. I've only been married since June, you guys.
He routinely says March, though.
March was the beginning of the lock-in, so we might as well have been married at that point.
Also, you guys, we got married on my actual birthday. So apparently I was born in March. I'll take March 28th and June 28th. No problem. So you ready to start?
Let's get into the script.
Okie doke.
In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to StorySmack. This is episode 59. StorySmack is a podcast about stories and storytellers in the world of pop culture. My name is A.B. Sigler, audiobook narrator and founding partner at Empty Set Entertainment.
And my name is Scott Sigler, #1 New York Times bestselling novelist, and I may have stepped on a duck. And since I don't feel good about the belly, I may be stepping on several ducks here today.
And back with us again today, lucky us, is Empty Set movie maven Rob Otto.
Hello,
How are you, Rob?
Otto.
Hey, is that your wife? I feel like they learned $14 the hard way.
I had to explain to A why the $14 the hard way was funnier than like $100 the hard way. And it took a while because I had to really think it through. But 14 being a random number for an escort, I think.
So we are here, obviously, if you can't tell already, to talk about Caddyshack. And I know you and Rob had have a long and storied history as youths. As the youths. Rob, I cannot estimate how many times I have watched this movie. Can you?
No, I can't estimate how many times you've watched this movie.
To be fair, we knew that was coming.
I have also watched it a large number of times, by the way.
Yeah. We used to back in the days. I hate to date ourselves, but back in the days of VHS, we had this one at several houses, and it was watched repeatedly, put on either to hang out or in the background as we role played D&D, or Champions was a big one, or Star Frontiers. Remember that one? Holy cats, going way back. Anybody, if you were role players back in the day, mention in the chat room. You Utes probably don't know what that is. Although D&D's making a comeback, I hear. Big comeback.
Yeah. So we are definitely discussing Caddyshack today. Would you like to transition and give us your movie trailer voice guide?
I think the cold actually helps with this. Let's find out. Danny Noonan, a teen down on his luck, works as a caddy at the snob-infested Bushwood Country Club to raise money for his college education. In an attempt to gain votes for a college scholarship reserved for caddies, Noonan volunteers to caddy for a prominent and influential club member. Meanwhile, Danny struggles to prepare for the high-pressure Caddy Day golf tournament while absorbing new age wisdom from wealthy golf guru Ty Webb. Also, Carl Spackler chases a gopher. Is that the actual...
No, I added the gopher part. Sorry, I had to.
Because for a classic, that's all you need to say. Oh, Carl Spackler, good to go.
Yeah, but there's so much interesting about that particular character, which we'll dive into. I felt you gotta mention it, but that wasn't part of the movie trailer because
honestly,
it wasn't supposed to matter.
I didn't hear anything until the last, 4 words. Carl Spackler chases a gopher. I guess that's 5 words.
Yeah, I'm not wrong though.
No, that's true. So this one, guys, was shot on location at the Rolling Hills Country Club in Boca Raton, Florida.
Oh, wow.
Quick side note on that. So it was very funny. First time producer Doug Kenny, first time director and Harold Ramis, and they knew they wanted to be as far away from Hollywood as possible when they shot this movie.
Okay.
Because there were plenty of places they could have shot it around LA. So the excuse they made up was, we don't want any palm trees in the background because it's supposed to be the Midwest. But we're shooting it in the fall into the winter, so we can't actually shoot in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. So where did they go? Florida, surrounded by palm trees. So, yes, well done, guys, because this was supposed to kind of fill in for a couple of golf courses that the Murray brothers worked at as, salesmen as well as loopers, Looper. Caddy, a jock. And when they were growing up in Illinois outside of Chicago.
And the fictional Bushwood Country Club is actually supposed to be the one outside of Chicago, because there's a handful of things on the internet that for some stupid reason say Nebraska. I never read that until I was working on prep for this show. I always understood it to be their home golf course, the Murray brothers experience.
It's supposed to emulate their home golf course, right?
Yeah, but that's Chicago. That's not Nebraska.
So there's a line in the original script, at the end of the script. The script changed so much. It was a coming-of-age story about Danny Noonan. And it ends with he and the family at the airport, him getting on a plane for Omaha, Nebraska, assuming that he's going to go to law school at Nebraska, apparently. I don't know.
I bet that's totally it.
That's where Nebraska came in, but just because he's getting on a plane to Nebraska doesn't mean he's already in Nebraska, or else they just would have driven his ass there.
I'm glad I asked, because I was so confused about that part. I was like, I've never heard that before.
Rob, we have a question in the chat room. Do you know which course the Murray brothers worked at?
They worked at several, but one of them was Indian Hill Club in Winnetka, Illinois. That was the one that...
Winnetka. Hey, what? We're from Winnetka.
I also love that the Murray family, good Irish Catholic family, there's 9 children. There are 3 Murray girls.
Okay, yep.
But I also never really even thought to think about that until I was researching this for today's show. Because the Murray boys, the Murray brothers,
are very famous.
Murray boys. Yeah, and they're all actors. And the girls, one of them is a chef. The sisters, one of them is a chef. And I think one of them is like manages their restaurant or something like that. But yeah, it was interesting. So, by the way, we are drinking on the West Coast anyway. We are drinking the El Palenca from Shaker and Spoon. These are just sort of totally not sponsored, but totally fun drinks.
I'm drinking a hot toddy because I'm feeling slightly under the weather, and A makes a sick ass hot toddy. Rob, are you partaking, or are you just hanging out?
I am drinking El Agua Abso Pure, which is a wonderful Michigan company. So there you go.
My drink comes with a dehydrated slice of pineapple.
Oh, wow. Are you going to eat that later?
Mine comes with rehydrated, dehydrated water.
How do you fix dehydrated water? That's the question.
Add water to it.
Let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. A, do you have any financial particulars on this movie? How did it do in the box office?
I do. So the budget was $6 million. That's what it cost to make this movie. It took in just shy of $40 million domestically. And if you adjust that $40 million to today, it would have taken in $134 million domestically.
If anybody's watching this and you just got blocked out of the chat room because you worked at a game store back in the 80s or 90s, that's my bad. Throws an email at info@emptyset so we can get that fixed after the fact. I meant to respond and say, bless you for the Lord's work of working in a game store, because you were very influential to people like me and Rob back in the day. And then I blocked you because I'm a savage. That's how we do things.
So that money was a huge disappointment at the time, because they were coming off, Ramis and Kenny were coming off of Animal House, which was made for about $3 million and made like $140 million or something like that. So of course, Orion was thinking, well, this is going to be even bigger. And so they spent twice as much and made less than half as much. So that's a huge amount of money. Over $35 million on a $7 million investment. Great, fantastic.
That seems positive to me.
They were still upset.
Now, is there any kind of, have either of you guys, I could look this up too, anybody gone in and seen after the fact merchandising, VHS, DVD, etc.? So
there is a whole bunch, of course, to talk about on the internet. People talk about this movie all the time, just like the last one we did. And yes, the thing that saved this movie, it's sort of like Trolls 2. It didn't do well at the box office. Not that Trolls 2 had a box office, but it got this cult following. Literally, you guys are part of the reason that we're talking about it today, because it was it was easily available, quickly available, right when the Betamax VHS wars ended, and VHS was the thing, and they were ready to go, and then it became a cult classic. And I think it's deserving of its cult classic status. It's kind of a little picture into the 1980s.
It's incredible. We're going to talk about it. We're going to start out by breaking down the cast, since we're going to be including scriptwriters and directors in the cast. A lot of the juicy details of this movie are going to come out as we discuss it. But let's talk about Hollywood royalty in the field of comedy. There's very, very few like this. Let's go to the actors. Starting out with the late, great Harold Ramis. Caddyshack was his directorial debut. He was also one of the co-writers for it. He went on to write, direct, and or produce 23 films and TV projects. He died at 69. Oh yeah, from autoimmune vascular. I'm just saying, if you got to die at an age that's not like 180, 69 is a good number to go at. He also acted in dozens of projects throughout particularly Stripes, which I think is his absolute standout. He was so accomplished. He was so accomplished as a creator, and I think this is relatively unusual for a person who focuses on comedy, that President Barack Obama released a statement on his death.
Yeah. So when Harold Ramis died, which was way too soon, President Obama said, "When we watched his movies, from Animal House and Caddyshack to Ghostbusters and Groundhog's Day, we didn't just laugh till it hurt. We questioned authority. We identified the outsider. We rooted for the underdog. And through it all, we never lost our faith in happy endings." President Obama ended his statement by saying he hoped Ramis had received total consciousness, which of course is a reference to a line from Caddyshack.
And we have a rough script that we go through for these shows, and I had never heard that President Obama had honored him. And then when I read that last line, I was like, "You son of a bitch, Obama."
It got a little wet in the room, a little bit dusty.
Yeah, I was just like, "That's." I don't know. Obama probably didn't write that. He had great writers and great people managing the business around him. But I was like, "You son of a bitch! That you shouldn't have made me cry in that." Like what? 20 years after the fact now.
Yeah.
All right, so.
He may not have written it, but I'm sure he actually understood it, unlike some people's speeches. So, big thing that you guys mentioned, first directorial project for Harold Ramis. So again, the Orion Pictures was so giddy over the moon that they threw a couple $1 million at a stupid college movie that they never had any expectations at in Animal House. That turned into a huge boon for the folks at National Lampoon, which is where both Doug Kenny and Harold Ramis came from. That when they said, okay, well, we'll sell you this movie, but Harold has to direct and Doug has to produce. So a first-time producer, a first-time director on location, thousands of miles away from Los Angeles. It's crazy to think about it. Now, there are some one big story that I think is probably apocryphal, and Harold Ramis has denied it, but supposedly on the first day of shooting, he walked up to the first camera that was set up and looked in the wrong end, which you think that's a pretty good start to the first day, right? Now, a couple of stories that he has never denied is that they were getting ready for the very first shoot, and this is the smart thing to do. If you've got a first-time director, you surround them with assistant directors and cinematographers that really know what the hell they're doing.
Okay.
And so they did this with Harold, and so they're getting ready for the first shot. The big wide open shots that they did on the golf course, right? And the cinematographer says, "Okay, so where do we want to set up the cameras?" And Harold just kind of looked around and said, "Well, how about over here?" And so the cinematographer said, "Really, you want to shoot right at the all the trailers and craft services and the makeup tent?" And Harold said, "Oh yeah, well, maybe we'll set up over here." And he said from that point forward, he just asked the cinematographer where he thought they should set up.
That's the way you should do it. That's the way you should do it.
I was just about to say that doesn't make him a terrible director necessarily. That makes him a willing to learn, and of course he earned out. He got a whole lot better, well, not during this shoot, but he got a whole lot better, a whole lot faster, which is lucky for us.
And Rob, Doug Kenny has quite a track record, as I understand it, in the world of entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, Doug Kenny came from Harvard, where they were doing the Harvard Lampoon, which has been around for more than 100 years, and they decided when they graduated they just didn't want to stop doing it, and so they made the National Lampoon, and that's really where all these threads come from. And you think about anyone on that initial SNL cast, just geniuses, the Murray brothers, everybody.
A lot of Second City.
Gilda Radner, they all came out of National Lampoon. Second City, yeah, was a feeder.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Yeah,
exactly right. And so Doug Kenny was the one who ended up writing this movie, and he really brought everybody in. And so he co-wrote this with Harold and with Brian Doyle Murray, one of the Murray brothers. They also did Animal House, which is really how this whole thing got off the ground. And so, it's really once Kenny decided they were moving into movies, he quit the National Lampoon, just kind of moved forward from there.
Okay.
And then once Animal House was a huge hit, Kenny and Ramis were able to do it with one caveat.
Which is?
They didn't have a huge budget, but they needed someone that the Orion Pictures would look at and say, that is a verifiable movie star.
Okay.
And until they got that, nobody signed off. But then they got one Chevy Chase to sign on to this movie. He was just coming off the movie Foul Play.
Okay.
Huge hit with Goldie Hawn, had already been on Saturday Night Live. And Chevy Chase was the reason this movie got made.
One of the things I love about that is if you're here in 2020 and you think about, and somebody had asked you that at a bar trivia night, pretending we could have bar trivia nights. No, I know. But had that come up at a bar trivia night, so the movie wouldn't get greenlit until they got a star. In 2020, which actor would you guess was that star? Because in 2020... Oh, you mean
in retrospect, looking at the cast now, which one do you think got him the money?
And of course, I think everybody, because the movie is shaped around Bill Murray's character.
Yeah.
Well, shaped around the gopher, but we'll talk about that in a minute too. But that isn't where the movie started. So even when it started, they needed Chevy Chase. So both ways, because also the way the movie ended up, Carl has a much bigger role than he should have. And of course, now in 2020, Bill Murray is, a national treasure, weirdo national treasure. And so you might guess him at a bar, but you'd be wrong.
Yeah.
In retrospect, if you had a second guess, it probably still wouldn't be Chevy Chase. It'd be Rodney Dangerfield.
Absolutely.
It feels like Rodney. We're going to get to Rodney in a little bit, but it feels like he was a huge star at the time. Rob, now Kenny has this amazing success, right? Mm-hmm. And then, but it did not go well for him. As sometimes happens in Hollywood, people have massive success, don't handle it well. He didn't handle it well either, apparently.
No, and it didn't help that, that he was doing about 4 pounds of cocaine every day. That might have had something to do with it. But no, listen, he's one of those guys. Doug Kenny was one of those guys, if you ever read his autobiography, that no matter what he did, he never thought it was good enough. He also craved attention from his father, who just thought he was making dirty movies and silly magazines and never gave him any of that credit either. Mm-hmm. And so no matter what happened with Doug Kenny, it wasn't good enough. Now, he looks back at Animal House and says, okay, that actually was good enough. That was a huge success. Okay. But then, of course, the pressure to outdo it lands on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. And when Doug Kenny saw the final cut of this movie after they added more gopher, which I know we will get into, he was so depressed. He was like, this is awful. He actually kind of broke in on a press junket that they were doing with, before the movie to try and sell the movie. Came in drunk as a skunk, telling everyone who would listen how shitty this movie was. He hated the final cut. He hated what he thought Hollywood did to it. He hated that they even took away the coming of age story and changed the whole story. And Doug Kenny did not end well, just a couple months after this movie was released. So that means he never really got to see how successful how well received this movie was. And
the literally the decades of love and fandom that this movie has engendered, what happened to him?
So yeah, it's so after the reviews started coming in, and remember, this is 1980. It wasn't released to 600 theaters at once. Okay. They made 20 or 30 or 40 prints, started half of them in LA and half of them in New York, and it slowly moved across the country. So it wasn't even widely available by the time. So about 2 months after, it came out in June, I want to say, and in August, he was trying to, clean himself up or maybe going on a bender in Hawaii. Okay. And one day they just found him at the bottom of a 35-foot cliff. Oof. And, there were all sorts of signs up there that said, don't get too close to the edge. And Doug Kenny, everyone will tell you, was the kind of guy that if there was a sign that said, don't do something, he would do it. And if it was a time of selfies, he probably would have been taking selfies of himself doing it.
Sure.
And so they don't know if he jumped or if he fell. Some say that he fell trying to find a place to jump. But yeah, so. But
it's again, somewhere in the chat room. Okay. Oh Lord.
That's the terrible thing. Think about this.
Okay.
I mean, the guy would still be around today, right? I mean, how many more Animal Houses and CADDYSHACKs are in that guy's brain that we never got to see?
And look what the rest of the cast has done, sticking together largely doing repeated projects. He could have been part of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Think about it. He would have been part of Ghostbusters. He would have been part of, anything that Murray did. He would have been part of Groundhog Day. He would have been part of all that.
And it's an interesting thing. I have to say a couple things. Howard DiNatale, who is a film buff filmmaker,
Howard's big into movies.
Cinephile for sure, is in the chat room, and he said, "I do think you guys should mention the movie's fourth sponsor, cocaine." And it is a well-recognized thing that this whole set was absolutely fueled by illicit drugs. And by the end of and everybody thought they were having a good time. It was a happy Animal House.
Yeah.
Well, and it was an Animal House-like environment, and everything was fine. And it's sort of Animal House on a golf course
and
during the summer.
Early 30s, right?
But it's also the woolly 80s, and everything was going. But by the end of the shoot and the start of the press junkets, it became clear that Doug Kenny was in over his head. Mm-hmm. And I understood, and I could absolutely be wrong, but I understood that Chevy Chase was actually, because he was wealthier, he was a bigger star, he was the one who brought him to Hawaii to try to get him away from all of his drug partying friends and stuff.
Yep.
And then he had to go work. He had to go back to work because he had another movie. So Doug Kenny's girlfriend flew out. And then Kenny's girlfriend had to fly back. And Chevy Chase was actually getting ready to go to Hawaii to hang out with Doug Kenny again when he got the call that he had died.
I wonder if Chevy Chase's job was to repair the handrail on the area that Doug Kenny fell off of. Chevy Chase worked a lot of jobs.
There was, when they were cleaning out his hotel room, they found in among his notes, he had been workshopping a whole bunch of things and had a zillion notes. It doesn't honestly look like he thought he was going to die that day from the sounds of things. And he did write, there was a note scrawled on one of the notes, or one of the pages, which was, "These last few days are among the happiest I've ever ignored."
Crazy. So now, and this is one of my favorite parts about this movie, is that one of the actors is one of the co-writers, and a lot of people know this who are movie buffs. Everyone's a movie buff knows this. A lot of people don't. That Bill Murray's brother was one of the screenwriters and also starred in the movie. Brian Doyle Murray.
Yeah, is one of Bill Murray's older brothers. Caddyshack is, as I understand it, largely or somewhat autobiographical, based on the Murray boys' experience caddying in the summers at, what was it, Indian Hills? Indian Wells? What was it? Is Indian Hill Club, right? Indian Hill Club, yeah. So in the movie, you see there on the left, Brian does play Lou Loomis, who is the only one in the entire movie to actually say the word Caddyshack, because he works in the Caddyshack. And this was his movie debut. He had done some TV before that. He has since then done quite literally dozens and dozens of roles. He now, in his 60s, looks a lot like Santa Claus, and so you can find him almost every year in a Hallmark holiday movie, and I love that about him. But he's also been that
looks like a happy son bitch right there.
I mean, wouldn't you be if you were a Murray brother? And you know they're good. They seem to have had a rarity, right? They've had somewhat fairly untarnished. Like, they've done the stupid things everybody does, but they haven't done anything else. But he's been in a zillion movies, you know. He's been in Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I know is a TV show.
I'm going to have to go back and watch it. I don't remember him in that one, but we'll have to find it tonight.
Groundhog's Day, Married with Children, Wayne's World, 16 Candles, and my favorite, he plays Jack Ruby in Oliver Stone's hyper-political JFK.
Yeah, this looks like an assassin right there, doesn't it?
He doesn't look anything like that in JFK, but I love that he is very comfortable in his space being a comedic actor, writer, performer, and then also was like, no, yes, absolutely, I'll play Jack Ruby. I love that about him, and good for him.
Yes. Robin, this is he's not the only brother in the business, as I understand it.
No, and actually all 6 brothers play at least a cameo role in this movie. Some of them are caddies, some of them are on, part of Al Cervik's table sitting at, which is actually where Doug Kenny is at that one as well. He's one of Al Cervik's
is he?
friends.
I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah.
But
he's all of them are in that, and really, as A mentioned, the autobiographical nature, that opening scene, where all the kids are trying to get into the bathroom at the same time, and mom is going around the house, and there's 700 kids in there. That was the Murray family. That's really where they got all that stuff from. That was an average morning trying to get ready in the Murray household.
Okay.
And the family and the parents were supposed to play a much bigger role, because the movie again was supposed to center on Danny Noonan. And so they just kind of, after the first scene, they pretty much disappeared. I mean, they weren't in the rest of the movie, but that's how it all started out with all of the guys. A lot of them, they've been successful actors, they've been successful writers. They've all really stayed in the business. But of course, we cannot talk about the Murray brother that makes Caddyshack, and really the through line of the entire movie.
The icon.
Mr. William Murray, as a certain Harl Jr. groundskeeper Spackler.
And Rob blew me away with some of his knowledge. And so, again, I've watched this movie. It's possible I've watched this movie 100 times, triple digits. Rob brought some serious knowledge heat to this. Rob, share with us some of the stuff you have discovered or learned.
Well, here's the interesting thing. When they first wrote the script, Carl Spackler did not have a single line of dialogue. He was going to be a silent cameo. That was it. But once they got Bill Murray to agree to do the role. And honestly, they weren't even sure when they were shooting if Bill was even going to show up. But all of a sudden, he did show up. And they still didn't write a single line of dialogue for him. Bill Murray's entire performance is ad-libbed. Now, they would talk about the things that they wanted him to say. But essentially, like when he's doing the Cinderella story, right? The script just says, Carl knocks the heads off of flowers with a weed whip and does play-by-play.
Okay.
That was it. And he went on for 30 minutes, which they cut down to about 5 minutes or so. And it's gold. It's absolute gold. Everyone quotes that line.
Sure.
And it all came right off the top of Bill Murray. That's what a freaking genius he was. So they knew Bill from Second City in Chicago. That's where he knew Harold and he knew Brian Doyle Murray.
For those that don't know, Second City was largely an improv comedy troupe. So
exactly right.
Most of what they would do is they get these comedians together with a loose structure of what they want, what the scene they wanted to do. And part of the thrill was it was a different show every night because they're playing off each other and improvising and doing things in the moment. So when you talk about turn on the camera and let Bill Murray, here's your one plug line, go crazy for 30 minutes, that's in his sweet spot, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. That's exactly it. It's funny, the first scene that they shot with Bill was the scene where he's got Angie D'Annunzio, who's Tony D'Annunzio, who again was supposed to be a main character in this movie. Angie's his younger brother. He wore the Knight Riders t-shirt the whole time.
Sure.
No freaking idea what that was, by the way. He's got him up against the wall with the pitchfork, and he's doing the whole caddying for the Dalai Lama scene. Again,
that was all improv?
Top of his head.
Holy cat.
Yeah, which is nice.
After they played Angie, this is the first time he'd ever met him, right? And Bill keeps poking him with the pitchfork. And in between takes, he'd say, man, that's really starting to hurt. Will you stop poking me so hard? He was like, relax, Bergdorf. I got this. It's like unbelievable.
We've got, and Bill Murray has gone on, of course, to do just dozens of movies. It's incredible.
I mean, this list doesn't even do him justice. I got a huge list in front of me, and it's Stripes, Tootsie, Ghostbusters, Razor's Edge, Little Shop of Horrors, Scrooge, Ed Wood, Kingpin, What About Bob, Groundhog Day, Space Jam, Rushmore, Groundhog Day. See, I did it. Royal Tenenbaums, Lost in Translation, Zombieland, and like 50 more.
It's incredible.
He was one of the most prolific actors over the last 40 years in Hollywood. And he had done one movie. He did Meatballs prior to this.
Oh, God, Meatball. How could I not? Oh, my God.
Summer Camp.
It's
right.
incredible.
That's the only movie he had done, but it was enough proof that he worked on screen and could control the camera. Because before that, we'd only seen him for about a year when he took Chevy Chase's spot on Saturday Night Live. But that was it. And he came in and just exploded. Just took the movie over.
And still a Titan. Gets to do anything he wants to do. But what would this movie be? What would this movie be without one of my most beloved actors that I just adore, Mr. Rodney Dangerfield? Hey, jeez. My head like that, get a free bowl of soup. John Viscar just mentioned he showed up and he's eating soup out of a hat. So,
it looks good on you, though.
Yeah.
My dad loved Rodney Dangerfield. Coach loved Rodney Dangerfield. Still does it say. So we watched anything with Rodney Dangerfield we could on it. Of course, when this movie came out, it was just unbelievable. His real name was Jack Roy, which is new information to me. A found that out. I didn't know that. Plays.
Wait a minute. What?
Yes.
I have to interrupt.
What?
So Rodney Dangerfield spent a goodly amount of his life. He started as a Borscht Belt comedian, of course. He's a Brooklynite of Jewish descent.
Okay.
And so he totally was a Borscht Belt comedian, but he wanted a bigger, broader life. And every role that he got that was at all dramatic was fine, but he looked and sounded like a Borscht Belt comedian.
Okay.
So he created Rodney Dangerfield as an act, just like Andy Kaufman.
Get the fuck out of here.
And if you talk to his widow talked, and he did too at the end of his life, he was like, it was sometimes hard for him that he made this I don't get no respect persona, and he did it so well that he absolutely usurped himself. So he himself didn't get any respect. Rodney Dangerfield got a ton of respect. But Jack Roy was actually, I think, Jacob Cohen, born Jacob Cohen.
Jacob Cohen.
Yeah, and changed his name to Jack Roy to get away from the Borscht Belt thing, and wanted more. And he had a few serious roles, but not terribly many, and it was upsetting for him.
Another comedian who is just worth an absolute crap ton of money, who's done very well for himself, that has a similar story, is Larry the Cable Guy. Yeah. Larry the Cable Guy doesn't get a lot of respect these days. No, hey, you know what I'm talking about. He doesn't get a lot of respect because of the red state type comedy that he does. But that's completely a character. It's nothing like the guy in real life, and he just made so much friggin' money. He said he would just stick with it.
Jack Varney is also Ernest.
Ernest.
Is
oh
yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
That's
but
right.
I'm
So
surprised by that.
Rodney plays Al Cervic. Dangerfield lists this as his favorite role of his long and storied career. So, of course, as I mentioned, when he shot Caddyshack, he was already a very successful stand-up comedian. He was a regular on Carson and all of the other shows, decade of appearances and on variety shows, comedy tours. His role in Caddyshack pretty much just took his persona of Rodney Dangerfield and just brought it to life. A mentioned that in Caddyshack, Rodney Dangerfield finally got his respect.
Yeah, exactly. And that if you go to rodney.com, I think it still is rodney.com. He was also one of the first Hollywood personas to jump right into the World Wide Web and make his own webpage. And if you go there, there's like a little fact sheet, and I'm pretty sure it'll still say that's why Caddyshack was his favorite role, because he finally did it right. He finally got the right respect for being that perfect version of Rodney Dangerfield.
Although he was another one that, while it was happening, thought he was bombing the whole time, right? Because listen, his act was live, even when he was on Carson. It was he would feed off the energy of the crowd, and he would know, well, if they're not laughing, I better switch gears or do something. But of course, he would do takes, and no one would laugh. And he'd be like depressed afterward. And like Harold Ramis, the other actors would say, Rodney, we want to laugh. If you laugh, it's going to ruin the audio, and you're just going to have to do it over again. So yeah, he worked extremely hard. He would do prep with Harold Ramis every single night before they shot. But he was extremely professional. When, not partying with the 20-year-olds who were on the set. They loved Rodney as much as anybody else did.
Sure.
But yeah, he really thought he was doing a horrible,
That's amazing.
Job.
That's amazing.
And it wasn't until, again, Caddyshack itself got the respect that everybody went, Rodney, you're a freaking genius. And he was like, finally you noticed. Hey.
And apparently he got that figured out. Of course, we have great movies like Back to School and the rest of stuff Rodney did. And just a tragic loss. This is a classic picture of Rodney.
Autobiography.
Is that the cover of his autobiography?
Very
cool. Very cool. But we also have to talk about one that you Utes might not appreciate the importance or the significance of this man.
My man.
But I got that screwed up. Hold on. Rob, talk for a second.
Right. Me.
Talk for a second. Yeah.
I love this part of the Caddyshack story, because there's all these stories. We just talked about Rodney Dangerfield thinking he screwed the whole thing up. We talked about Doug Kenny being so depressed that it didn't have legs when it first came out. Harold Ramis talks about Caddyshack being a $6 million film school, or he talked about it before he died. And Ted Knight came into this movie an absolute bona fide star. He was a world class, knew what he was doing. Had been in movies and TV for 20 years, and he did not at all appreciate the hedonistic set, all the cocaine.
So he came in and wanted to be all professional and whatnot?
And knew that Smales was he knew he was the stick in the mud character. He had no problem with the fact that everybody else was cutting up and having fun. He had a lot of problems that the set was unprofessional. And it turned out that this was his last movie role, because he went into TV. He did...
Too Close for Comfort.
Too Close for Comfort. Thank you.
This is him in Too Close for Comfort right
This
here,
is him in Too Close for Comfort. I will say he every time he wore a school T-shirt, he was a cartoonist. It was a TV show, and he was drawing comics at his desk, and he always wore a different college T-shirt or a sweatshirt or whatever, and that were fans of the show would send them in, and he would just wear them. If they sent it in and said they were a student at Michigan or whatever, he would wear the T-shirt or the sweatshirt as a character, which I love about him. He was also like, if you think about that, he was that guy, and he got married one time in 1948 and stayed married to his wife until the day he died.
Wow.
You can see showing up on Caddyshack set might have been a lot for him, you know. But he had colon cancer and it went into remission, and then he started on Too Close for Comfort, and 3 seasons into the start of the third season of Too Close to Comfort, his colon cancer came back and he didn't survive that. So he took a leave of absence from the show to get better, and he did not get better, and he died at 62 in 1986. But I understand, Rob, from you that he did not like working on Caddyshack. Do you have any other reasons than the ones I mentioned?
Well, no. I mean, the biggest one was because, I mean, with a first-time producer and a first-time director who really didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Oh, sure.
Their previous movie was a bunch of 20-somethings just partying and making Animal House. So they kind of brought that to it. And the whole cast and crew stayed in a hotel, a motel, really. But it was right on the golf course in Florida. Mm-hmm. So the deal was they all knew I can roll out of bed 60 seconds before I'm supposed to be on set and I'm good. So they just partied. It was all alcohol and drugs and everything. And so call times started getting later and later. People stopped showing up to set. Oh, wow. And Ted Knight, 7 years on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which when you're doing weekly comedies like that, everything is to the second.
And Mary Tyler Moore Show, if you're not familiar with it, one of the biggest sitcoms of all time. It was like the Seinfeld of its day.
Yeah. And so he couldn't handle that. It was the lack of professionalism, and he couldn't go to the director or the producer to try and get other people in line because they were the ones cutting the lines on the mirrors.
That's
it's a little
totally
hard to
true.
have that discussion when by Bushwood. you can't. So yeah, he was pretty miserable. And then on top of that, he kept seeing his part get smaller and smaller and smaller. When the movie was more about Danny and Tony and Maggie, he was a bigger character. He interacted with all of them.
Okay.
And as their roles got smaller, his role got smaller. And so yeah, he just wasn't happy.
Which is wonderful because Caddyshack was, and I think, Rob, you're going to talk about Chevy Chase in a second, but Caddyshack was very stereotypical for the 1980 release date, because back then the big thing was the classism and the class warfare, right? So this was the young kids usurping the whatever, and here he is, the old guard, kind of getting usurped as time went on. Yeah.
And speaking of Chevy Chase, let me zip ahead a couple photos here because I screwed up the order. No big deal. Here we go. And Rob, Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase.
Chevy. Come on. I mean, this is great. This is Chevy coming off of, just 1 year on Saturday Night Live, just the first year, and then he left to become a big star.
He only did 1 year? I did not know that. That is amazing.
Only 1 year. And then he went out, and then he made Foul Play with Goldie Hawn, which was a huge hit. And so he was the suave, debonair, he was the one, and he was the star that got this movie made. They do not make it. They don't greenlight it. Orion doesn't without Chevy Chase on board, which again, looking back, he seems like a pretty secondary character now.
Yeah.
But at the time, he was the central figure. So one of the things was they really wanted to make sure that they had the star power because they weren't sure that Harold Ramis would be able to carry things on his own. So he wanted people around them that could help steer him in the right direction. There's a story that the John Peters was one of the executive producers, that they had a list of 10 directors who were ready to take over for him at any moment, because that's how afraid they were that he wasn't going to be able to do it. So, yeah, you got Rodney Dangerfield, you got Bill Murray, then you get Chevy Chase. He received the Golden Globe nomination for Foul Play just the year before.
Okay.
Of course, his work on Saturday Night Live. And then, I mean, listen, we talk about Bill Murray's huge career. What about Chevy's huge career?
Giant.
And here's the thing that I think made Chevy's career even better. At the time, he was Hollywood leading man. Handsome, tall, when he blows the smoke out of the side of his teeth, when he's looking at Lacey, like he's a bull or something like that. He went against type to play Clark Griswold, and that became what launched him from here to way up here.
Okay.
That's what did it. Fletch, TV series Community, 6 seasons in a movie. They're still waiting on the movie part, that kind of stuff. Now, with Chevy, there also came Chevy's ego, which we have seen plenty of over the years.
Sure.
And Cindy Morgan, who's the actress who plays Lacey Underall, they did not really get along during the course of this movie. And it just probably started, Cindy has talked about this for years afterwards. It started with one of them said something, and then the other one said something, and neither one of them was big enough to apologize for the thing they said. So they just went into every scene with this animosity going on. And the two really big scenes between Lacey and Chevy as Ty, tie me up with your ties, Ty.
Yep.
The oil, when they're doing the back rub, and he says, here, you just need a little oil. Again, she is completely pissed at Chevy Chase at this point. He unscrews the cap without her knowing he's going to do this and dumps the whole bottle of oil all over her back. And her reaction is, you're crazy. That was not acting. That was not Lacey. That was Cindy telling Chevy that he was crazy, right? And then the second scene is when they're at the piano. So this was actually in between takes. She was getting her makeup touched up. And Harold just said, hey, Cindy, come over here and sit at the piano just for a minute. I want to workshop something with you and Chevy, right? Wow. And so she sits down. She's pissed at him. She barely wants to look at him. And he starts playing the little song, right? And does the thing with the tequila.
I was born to love you.
Let's see. What
I was born to lick your face.
Right.
I was born to love you, but you were born to love me first. Why don't we go into the bedroom?
But what Rob is about to say is he did
the tequila shot.
Yeah.
Right? So they got 2 tequila shots lined up, and she doesn't know what he's doing. He takes the tequila, because she said something like, I don't know. I don't really know how you're supposed to do this. He throws the tequila over his shoulder. He snorts the salt and then sucks on the line and then starts playing the song. Cindy said it was at this moment that she looked up and saw the camera was running. Right. And she was like, you could see the look on her face. She looks at the camera, then she looks at Chevy, and in her mind, it's just like, you sons of bitches. This is going to be in the movie. I just know it.
And, Cindy today, she went through a whole roller coaster of she felt manipulated. She says, plainly, she says more than once, she was not a terribly good actress at the time. So she was competing with these, obviously, not necessarily everybody who was much more famous than she was, but people who were more talented than she was. And she knew it. And then, of course, she had all this animosity. But I think one of the most magical things about that piano scene, as Rob just stated, is it's incredibly totally improv, and it started with Harold Ramis telling Cindy Morgan, please go sit down and ask me, or whatever, go tell you. So all of that, the song lyrics, the snorting the salt, the tossing the tequila, all of that is improv from Chevy Chase. It makes him literally a genius. In that moment, you could have seen, and this is the thing that makes me really sad about this movie, when you look at retrospectively, you see this is who Doug Kenny could have been. He had these same chops. He was this same writer. He was that fast with a joke. And he just didn't make it through. And, Chevy has had, recently especially, has had some trouble with his approaching people and his ego and his substance abuse and all that stuff. But, he's also been in the business for
a long time, and a king of the business for a long time. So we talk about...
Hold on, Scott. Before we move on, one other quick story about Cindy Morgan, because I know we're about to move on. During when the love scene with her and Danny Noonan in the judge's bed, they actually, John Peters sent photographers from Playboy to the set that day. They were actually going to do a mini spread on her to help promote the movie. They never asked her. They never told her.
Whoa. And
she said, listen, I don't have a problem getting naked. No worries at all. It's for the movie. It makes sense. It makes it more real. She said, but you can't just expect me to do this for anybody else except for the movie. And so she refused to do it. And John Peters was going to try to force her to do it. And Harold Ramis eventually stepped in and said, listen, if she's not comfortable doing this, we're not doing this. And so I give him a huge amount of credit for that. And her. Yeah. I mean, this is 1979, right? This is, there was no women's lib in Hollywood
Right.
in the 70s and
Right.
80s. It was all about
90s.
you're a piece of meat and we're going to use you however we want to use you, and we don't even have to ask permission. She said that's not how it's going to work with me, and she deserves a huge amount of credit, as well as Harold for sticking up for her.
Yeah, and John Peters is also her contract didn't have a nudity clause in it.
Okay.
And John Peters was the one who says, "Yeah, no, this is the only way we sell a movie." And she, like Rob says, agreed, for the movie I will do this. But it was supposed to, it wasn't supposed to be there. And then when this happened, not only did Harold Ramis stick up for her and she stick up for herself, but she fired her agent because her agent agreed with John Peters. Her agent was just like, he's one of the biggest producers in the world. Can't you just do it once? And she was like, no.
Bobo, do what he says. It's fine. It's going to be fine.
See ya. Which
See ya.
I'm not sure if that was great for her career since she didn't work
do a whole
again,
lot after this.
but maybe she didn't want to work those movies.
After this,
She did
Yes.
what?
Tron.
Tron?
she was the female lead in Tron.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not
Now
know
you
that.
do.
Now I know that. All right, let's talk about going back when I screwed up the order. Sorry, guys. This is crazy to me. This is technically the protagonist, technically the lead of the story. And wait for it. It gets deeper. So, of course, when you talk about Caddyshack, you're talking about Ted Knight, Rodney Dangerfield, Chevy Chase, Bill Murray, the Gopher. You talk about the Gopher more than the actual lead of the movie. So the guy who's the lead of the movie is Michael O'Keefe. Not only is he a classically trained actor who has had a long career, but the guy who is completely overshadowed in this movie was nominated for an Academy Award
During filming. Yeah.
So this dude is it's hard. The only way to get to be bigger than him, kudos wise, is to actually win an Academy Award. He was nominated for Academy Award for, what was it, Robbie? I forget here.
The Great Santini.
The Great Santini.
Yes,
wonderful,
right.
wonderful movie. And he's almost completely an also ran in this. It's absolutely bonkers. But he's been working in film and TV ever since. Mm-hmm. And a fun note I learned while A was researching this, he was married to Bonnie Raitt for about a decade.
Yeah, he just seems like a lot like Brian Doyle Murray, at least in my opinion. He seems to have been constantly working as an actor, a writer, a producer, all that stuff. He's more of a character actor, but he's been working since Caddyshack, and he's had a really, he's I don't know, acquitted himself well as a person. Like he's worked real hard. He's done a lot of good things that he's proud of, and I think he's like an honorary Murray brother who sort of survived the Caddyshack experience.
And a lot of the Caddyshack experience in the movie was stuff based on things that the Murray brothers did when they were caddies, right? Including the caddy tournament.
Really?
Yeah.
Right? That's not something they made up, just to do this, trying to win money for college. Ed Murray, who's probably one of the lesser known of the Murray brothers, he actually won the caddy tournament when he was a caddy.
Yeah.
And so that's where the stories came from. They all blossomed from this thing, which is funny. The movie grew out of that core of Danny Noonan trying to get money for college, trying to deal with his crazy family and his crazy, who was supposed to be an Irish exchange student, right? I don't know, Maggie, dealing with his rival, frenemy, Tony D'Annunzio. That was the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that's where everything else sprouted from. Then they got rid of the core and just kept all the sprouts.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what happened. But yeah, a lot of that came from the Murray brothers' actual experiences.
And I find this hard to believe, really, and I'm being legitimate. Caddyshack wasn't even nominated for anything. And retrospectively, when the Webbies started to do, or not the Webbies, the Razzies started to do their retrospectives, they won a bunch of awards. But it was absolutely under the radar, which to me seems almost impossible. But then we talked at the top of the hour about this movie really found its groundswell in VHS. So that would. We still don't have awards for things that get VHS or streaming popular.
I guess so, and that will change the face of awards moving forward. But now you get a lot of stuff winning awards for streaming. It's dominating. In
now there's
Emmys,
a Webby,
etc.
Yeah, now there's a Webby and stuff, and Emmys, but there weren't before. There weren't those sort of things, especially not in 1980, of course, because there wasn't an
movies
internet.
that originated on streaming services are getting nominated for Oscars now.
Yep.
I mean, it has become an entirely different thing. But back in the day, I mean, it was the invention of the VHS and the VCR and, video cassette rental places. That's what made the movie. This could have easily been a forgotten movie.
Oh, sure.
Saw it, never thought about it again. And here we are 40 years later still talking about it.
And it makes you wonder what movies from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and 70s, I guess, that are just completely forgotten, that if you go back and watch them, they may have had the same kind of cult classic following.
Yeah, and we talk about this every once in a while on StorySmack, this idea that before there was so many ways to get at cinema, at reviews, at other viewers, to have these discussions, you have to wonder, like Citizen Kane shows up on every single top 10, top 100, top 1 zillion list, always in the top 10. And you have to wonder if people could have talked about it back in the day and it had 80 years worth of armchair reviewers, would it still hold up? And I'm not saying it wouldn't. I'm just saying what else came out around then. Of course, there was vastly fewer movies coming out, but you have to wonder what got missed because the studio wanted Citizen Kane to be the one, so to speak. Not dogging Citizen Kane, you guys. Don't email me. Don't email me. I'm not dogging it. I'm making a different point.
We got a couple remaining things to talk about with this flick. Just some interesting side notes, some interesting stories. Rob, what is your favorite side story with Caddyshack?
I'm going to skip ahead in our little list here, if that's okay with you.
Sure, yeah, these are all.
I'm not even sure that I mentioned this. So I've ragged on John Peters a few times during this set. I need to give him some props. So because, again, Orion was kind of a hands-off company. They let the people on the set really control what was going on. One big note that John Peters has was, you have two of the biggest comedic geniuses in the world on this set right now, and they don't have a scene together. Fix that. So the scene of Chevy and Bill Murray in Carl Spackler's apartment, in the one corner of the garage.
The shed, yeah.
Yeah, right. Doug Kenny, Brian Doyle Murray, and Harold Ramis talked about that scene over lunch. They shot it that night. They were worried because there had actually, when Chevy went back to host Saturday Night Live the year after he left, there was actually a physical altercation between Chevy and Bill in the hallway. And so they weren't sure how this was going to go, but they basically quickly laid out the scene. The guys ad-libbed the whole scene, and that scene, I mean, think about it. Chinch bugs. People don't, magnanese. People don't even know what that is, right? Cannonball.
Well, they had to have the weed. They had the weed prop, right? I mean, that part of it was worked out.
They knew where it was going to go, but some of the lines, like
pool.
Oh, you got to, what's you're over on Brookware. What's your address over there? 2. Like a line like that. Right? You got a pool over there. Well, we got a pool in a pond, but the pond would be good for you.
Pond would be good for you.
That's the kind of stuff that just rolled off their heads, and that scene did not exist. Never existed before the day they shot it. And it's one of the best scenes in the movie.
A couple quick points before we head out. As a
writer, I was
writer,
going to ask, what do you have a favorite?
The two things I really want are, as a writer who's tried to write screenplays, I use screenplays as outlines for novels, and it has worked out good with some things, bad with others. For example, Mount Fitzroy was, the screenplay was 40 pages long before I got out of the first chapter. So that clear doesn't work. The original screenplay for this, 250 pages. A and I just had a movie that may have had funding, except it came in at 121 pages and they wanted it at like 95, and they just straight up walked. They weren't even waiting for a rewrite. So 250 pages, and the original cut of this, 4 hours long. I want that cut.
So I have two things that I think are interesting. Also a John Peters thing. John Peters, so I think this is a well-known story for Caddyshack. When it got done with this 4-hour cut and 250 pages, it was flawed. It was hard to get together. There was no through line because they had all this improv stuff, and like Rob elucidated, they had pulled away the actual roots of the plot. So all they had was the stuff, and that didn't make any sense. So John Peters suggests, why not focus on the gopher?
Okay.
And so the gopher, all of the gopher scenes are post-production, and all of the gopher stuff, there are some schools of thought that posit that it all happened, except for the explosion, in Carl's head. Like he created all of that, which is why he's the only one who really interacts, other than that groundsman, the Simpsons groundsman.
Got to kill the golfers.
Yeah. Other than that, like, don't let that happen again, because that guy gets a complaint from a member, comes to Carl. Carl makes it his life's work, and I find that fascinating. That maybe nobody else, there wasn't ever any other gopher. But I also find this. During the review, I read, I think it was on Vox maybe, I read this thing, which for me totally works. Here on StorySmack, we wanted to review Up in Smoke a while back, and Scott and I started to watch it. And we were like, oh no, this doesn't hold up. And the thing is, in a way, for me anyway, Caddyshack doesn't quite hold up, but it kind of does hold up. It's a wonderful movie. So I saw this and I thought it was perfect. Alden Ford, I think he was writing for Vox, says, in the end, what's great about Caddyshack is that it's a museum piece. It's sort of a specimen. It's a fish growing legs and learning to breathe air. From an evolutionary perspective, it's absolutely fascinating. But you don't laugh all that much when you're in a museum. So I think people seeing it today have a different reaction than we have, because we grew through it, like lived through all that as well.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get the same reception from people half my age.
Also, that is the kind of quote written by someone who has been a member at a snooty golf club their whole life.
Exactly, which is lovely. That's what I love about it. It totally works, right? But I'm not sure that, well, I'll say this, but it's super obvious. Like, this movie was not going to get made today. It's amazing that it got made back then, let's be fair. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of the reason that, like, it doesn't have a great, unlike Star Wars and stuff, where you can introduce it to your kids and then they go on, this doesn't have those same legs. And I love that description of it. Is like, it's perfect as it is, and we're going to look at it as a retrospective kind of a little kaleidoscope or snow globe or something.
I think that about wraps it up for this episode of Story Smack featuring Caddyshack with our special guest, Empty Set movie maven and PGA hopeful, Rob Otto. Rob, thank you for being on again. Would you like to join us for the next one?
What is the next one?
Au revoir, go fair.
All right.
What is the next one?
Rocky or the Karate Kid, I think.
Well,
it's up to you.
Rocky.
The
I can't do
Kid?
Rocky.
Okay, sounds good.
The Karate Kid. Well, let's do two things real quick, Rob. Two things.
Okay.
You need to think about what holiday movie we're going to watch, because the next one is going to be 2 weeks from this episode, which will bring us to the end of November. And then we want something fun that a lot of people have watched.
And the Maven gets to decide.
The Maven gets to pick the holiday season movie. Doesn't have to be Christmas, doesn't have to be Thanksgiving, but it's got to be holiday season related, and it can't be Die Hard. It cannot be Die Hard.
Because we've already story smacked that.
So I think the next one we will do, since it's had a resurgence, and it was in the Gizmo tournament, we're going to go with Karate Kid. Because there's a lot of fun stuff in the Karate Kid.
Great.
A lot of follow-up.
I'm in.
Rob, thank you for being here. We are now going to take you off the camera, and since I don't have the ability to shut him the hell up, he's going to have to...
Talkie. Bye,
he's going to be
Junkie.
quiet. Bye.
Love
and
you.
We're out. Hello, everyone. All right. A and I are going to finish up this show. Tracy Shanks says, go Oilers, Mr. Otto. Very nice.
Nice.
We are finishing up Caddyshack, baby. Let's take everybody out with a smile and a wave.
So, you guys, this was episode 59 of Story Smack. You can always find Scott and I online. Scott is at Scott Sigler at Twitter and Instagram, and his Facebook page is facebook.com/Scott Sigler. I am at arealgirl on Twitter and at a.real.girl on Instagram. I'm not very often on Twitter, though. You can find us online at facebook.com/StorySmack. You can watch us stream Story Smack live at facebook.com/Scott Sigler, twitch.tv/Scott Sigler, and youtube.com/Scott Sigler. We would love to have you join our Story Smack 2 Saturdays a month. In addition to Story Smack, we do a twice-weekly live stream called Sigler in Place. It's on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right where you're watching this. It starts at 6 p.m. Pacific time. And last, Scott releases an unabridged episode of a serialized novel every week. You get episodes every Sunday for free via iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. Just go to scottsigler.com/subscribe for links. We really hope you subscribe so you can hear Scott's books and more Story Smack goodness and more Sigler in Place goodness in the future. And until the next episode,
we will talk to you all real soon. And now for our streamy people, now you guys get, you know what you get. It's Sigler in Place.
Oh, aren't we going to do that?
Yeah, we're going to do it anyways. We'll cut this out of the audio, but just for you people. Just for you people. Ready, everybody?
Dating game kiss off?
Mwah!